Today, I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the juicy nuggets that came out of that conversation. Specifically, I want to focus on the magic that happens when we're running a business that is fully aligned with our values, what really matters to us, and how much joy can come from that. Hey, beautiful humans. Welcome to the Bold Women in Business podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Honeyman, founder of Honeybee Bold and fellow bold woman in business. This show is all about highlighting women who are changing the world, helping other women, and kicking ass along the way. Let's dive in. Hello. So last week we had the immense honor hearing from Hyacinth Tucker. She is the laundry lady, and she is an entrepreneur that takes the hustle of running a business to the next level. She just works so hard. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode yet, I highly recommend going back and listening to it. She shared so much wisdom, but she's also just such a joy to listen to. She was such a joy to speak with. And today I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the juicy nuggets that came out of that conversation. Specifically, I want to focus on the magic that happens when we're running a business that is fully aligned with our values, what really matters to us, and how much joy can come from that. Hyacinth originally started her business as a way to help a friend. Right? She saw a friend in need and she saw that she could do something to help. And so she did. And that was kind of what got the gears turning. But her inner value of helping others and using this business to help others has continued even as she has built this kind of empire, really, at this point. She's got locations popping up all over the place. She seems to be taking over the East Coast. She's getting written up left and right, and she's really building this successful business. But that deep inner value of relieving pressure from those who are under sometimes the most pressure. Many of her clients are entrepreneurial moms. And, so they're juggling a million things and they're just under a ton of pressure. And the last thing that they need to worry about is laundry on top of all the other things that they're doing. And so that deep value of relieving pressure from those that really need it has continued. And this has continued really as a way to help others. And that value really just comes through so clearly in how she talks about the work that she does. It's not just about laundry. It's about the deeper value that she brings to the work that she does. And her love for what she does came through so clearly in our conversation. I mean, it just was such a joy to speak with her. And, she didn't go into this as just a way to make money. Money is a necessary part of our lives, and it's a beautiful part of our lives in many ways, right? It can open up so many opportunities and possibilities. And anyone who has experienced, as I have in my life, true scarcity, really not having enough money to make ends meet, or worrying about, bringing in enough money to cover your bills, right? Anyone who has experienced that understands that there's a real need for money here. We're running businesses to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. I am firmly of the belief that there is nothing wrong with that, and money can do incredible things for us. But as Hyacinth quoted so beautifully in our conversation, she said, "People chase money, but money chases value." And I would add an S to that, right? Money chases values, which sounds a little cheesy, but I think it's actually really true. I think what Hyacinth shows us is how much more fulfilling our lives and our work can be when we are driven by a much deeper set of values and a deeper sense of purpose. And we can achieve a much greater level of success when that's what's driving us, because that's what's going to speak to the values and meaning and purpose that our clients are feeling and that our clients want to invest their money in. I speak with a lot of business owners who don't really know what their inner values are. And I think that a lot of us, just as humans, don't fully understand, right? When we think about, those questions of what is my deeper purpose and why am I here and what am I doing? We have a really hard time answering those questions because they're really hard to answer. My clients are doing really good work, but they struggle to put into words what's underneath the work that they're doing. And when they are struggling with that, one thing that you can be absolutely certain of is that their ideal clients aren't going to connect with that deeper meaning and value and purpose because it doesn't come through in their messaging, what they're putting out into the world. Their brand is not exuding that deeper meaning and value because how can it? It hasn't been defined. We need to actually take a step back and define it before we can actually make sure that it's coming through in everything that we do. And that's really one of the biggest reasons I start all of my branding and web design projects with what I call my bold foundation, which is a deep dive conversation that helps us get underneath the why and how behind the work that my clients are doing. And that's what really builds the foundation for a really clear brand strategy that then winds up really informing the work that we do together. But one of my favorite questions in that deep dive conversation, and you heard me ask this question to Hyacinth in this episode, and spoiler alert, you're probably going to hear me ask this question to pretty much every badass female entrepreneur I speak to on this podcast, because it's one of my favorite questions, which is, what are your brand's identity pillars? And people don't necessarily understand what identity pillars are. They're familiar with the term brand values. To me, this is actually going a level deeper. What is the identity behind your brand that is driving what you do? What do you stand for as a brand? This isn't just about catchphrases or keywords that, buzzwords, right? That a lot of more corporate companies may use in their messaging. This is much deeper, and it's much more about how do we define the work that you do and why you're doing it and why it should speak to your ideal clients. And so many of my clients, when they're speaking to me, when I ask them this question, they have a hard time answering it because they haven't thought about these questions before. And so they stumble over their words a bit and they try to figure out, the correct way to answer this question. None of the questions that I ask have a right or wrong answer necessarily. It's much more of a conversation and really kind of figuring out, getting underneath, right? And they're trying to answer it correctly. But because I usually ask this question very deliberately, I ask this question about an hour into our conversation. We've already been talking about those core values without necessarily defining or calling them that, right? I start the conversation just kind of asking those basic questions about what do you do and why do you do it and who are you trying to speak to? And we're really defining all of those things along the way so that by the time we get to what are your identity pillars, and my clients are saying, I don't know how to answer that question, can start to kind of nudge them towards the answers that they've already given me without realizing that those are their core values. So I want to give an example. I have this incredible client that I'll be building their branded website in a couple of months. I tend to book out a couple of months in advance. But we did their bold foundation a little while ago, and we're getting ready to launch their website in a couple of months. These are two women who they happen to be best friends, which I just love that. I love that they're best friends building this company together. They're both formerly clinical social workers who got burnt out working in healthcare, as so many do. I am the wife of a doctor who left healthcare or left clinical healthcare for this very reason, because it's a tough field to work in. So I deeply understand where they were coming from with that. They're getting ready to launch a career coaching platform to specific fellow burnt out healthcare workers, healthcare professionals, find joy in their careers again. right? So many healthcare professionals go into this for very deep, meaningful reasons. Very few people are going into medicine or the related allied professions, as they call it, for just making the big bucks, because anyone who has any connection to healthcare knows that that's not really realistic anymore. Maybe once upon a time it was, but you got to really have some deep meaning behind going into this line of work. But then so many people get burned, right? Because even though they went into it with some deep, meaningful reasons, the system is such that it kind of chews you up and spits you out. And so they want to help people find joy in their careers again. And this word joy kept coming up. And in fact, the name of their company is Joy Journey, which is such a cool name. I love it. And yet, when we got to the identity pillars part of our conversation, they actually didn't struggle as much to answer the question. They had a lot of words at the tip of their tongues. They mentioned words like accessibility, connectedness, support, justice. Those were just some of the words that came up. And these are all incredible words that are deeply meaningful to the work that they're doing and the core values of this soon to be launched company. There was one word missing, and that was joy. And so as they're telling me what the values are, what their identity pillars are, and I said, "What about joy?" Right? This is so core to what you're doing. And as soon as I said it, they were like, "Oh my God, of course. How could we forget that?" But sometimes we become blind to the most obvious things because we're too close to them. And that's where an outside perspective can be really valuable, right? As someone who can kind of say, okay, I just heard you talk all about how important joy is to the work that you're doing. But when we identify what are your core identity pillars, joy did not come up. There's a disconnect there. And if they had gone full steam ahead with, the words that had come up, right? And they had built their brand and messaging and website around those other key pillars, accessibility, connectedness, support, justice, and other related words, they would have had a really powerful, meaningful brand. But if they had done that and left out joy, the whole vibe of their company and that kind of deeply meaningful piece of their brand would have been missing. And so now they're going to be able to build a brand and website with my help that really brings the full spectrum of their values to life. And that is ultimately going to not only attract their perfect fit clients, right? People who want all of those pieces and they want joy, they are going to be attracted to this. But it's also going to continue to infuse them with joy every day in their business. Just like the joy that Hyacinth exudes every day in hers, because her business is so values driven. And so that's really what I wanted to touch on today. As a business owner, you're juggling so much, and it can be really easy to lose sight of those deeper values that drive you, right? That's really the bigger picture here. Why are you doing this? And getting in touch with those can make all of the difference in how much joy or lack thereof your business brings you day in and day out. Does your business really help you feel aligned with your values and aligned with the things that bring you joy? Or does it just feel like you're going through the motions? Does your business bring you in touch with your values in such a way that it's really attracting those ideal clients? Or are you struggling to connect with the right people or enough people? If that's happening, there's usually a disconnect there. Usually, your brand, everything you're putting out into the world is not fully bringing those values to life. And often that's because you haven't really defined what those values are. So if you need help finding that joy again and that connection with your values, please reach out to hey@honeybeeble.com. let's do a quick vibe check. I would love to chat with you, help you bring those values to life again. You deserve the business that brings you joy and that brings you your ideal clients every day. Thank you. All right, beautiful humans, that's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Bold Women in Business podcast, hosted by yours truly, Rachel Honeyman, with music by Shmookalele. This show is brought to you by my company, Honey Be Bold, where we build bold, unstoppable brands and websites for kick-ass women in business. If you are a female entrepreneur or dream of being one, and you want to take your business to a level that no one can resist, reach out to me at hey@honeybebold.com for a free vibe check. Honey, be bold. See you next time.